Hey everyone, welcome to Laratips. In today's video, we'll be talking about API Resource. This video has been requested by Jahin and he is one of the sponsors of this channel. He requested me to make video about API Resource, so I'm making it. And if you also want to request some new videos, then consider sponsoring this channel. If you want to sponsor this channel, then you can just check out the links in the description. So without any delay, let's get started. First of all, let us go to the introduction. Here are a lot of things that are mentioned over here, but basically you need this API resource whenever you are building an API and you want to send response to the client. The response that is sent to the client needs to be consistent. Suppose you are sending only single user and it has some properties, and you are sending a collection of users. Then also they must have the same list of properties. Whenever the client tries to access it, let's say the client can be either JavaScript or any Android application or iOS application, they will not be surprised. So basically you can just make our data, response data consistent with the Laravel resource. And I'll walk you through everything in this documentation. First of all, let us see how to create a resource. And a resource is related to a model. So here you can see PHP artisan make resource user resource, which means this is related to a user. And by default, user model is always present on a Laravel project, so we'll also do that. Now let me go here in the terminal and let me create a user resource. Let's say PA is PHP artisan for me. PHP artisan make resource user resource and hit enter. Then it has created a user resource. If I see here, so I'll just show you that over here. Here is a user resource, and if I go here, then it will generate this class and it will have a toArray method on it. And let me also show you database here. Here in the users, I have this name, email type, and every other fields. Roles, I have this name, ID name created at, and in the role user, I have role ID, user ID. The user ID is related to this role and the expiry date. Currently all these are same, so this is just for demo purpose, so it doesn't matter whatever we put here. Okay, so we have this thing over here. Now let me go here in the API, this api.php, which is inside this routes folder. You can just do it in a web.php or any other controller, but basically we'll use this whenever we are creating an API. So I'll do that here. I have created this test route, and inside this test controller I have just returned wow. And in this API, I have here wow. Now let us just do, let's say user equals to user first, like this. Let me just import this first user. Now if I just return this user and if I just reload over here, then we'll see all these fields over here. But you want some control over the data that you want to send to the response. Suppose let's say from Android or from JavaScript, they are calling this API and they are getting this response, but we don't want all these things to be present in the response, so we need to modify it. So for that, we'll make use of the user resource. So for now, let me just do, instead of this return user, we'll say return new user resource, and here we'll pass the user. User is a resource. Now if I come here and reload, you can see here it is wrapped inside a data, and every other data is same, and all these data are same because if we go here in the user resource, inside this user resource class, then we haven't done anything over here. Let me just remove this comment from here. We basically need to return an array from here. So what I'll do here is just ID and let's say this ID. Now inside a resource class, this user resource class, this will refer to the model itself. So here we have passed user, so this will refer to the user model itself, so it will directly get the ID from the user. And under the hood, Laravel is using magic methods in order to accomplish this. And if you want me to make videos about it, how the Laravel does this magic, then just let me know in the comment section below, and also consider sponsoring this channel. And here let me just show here name like this, sorry, not here but only this one, name like this. Here I have written ID and name only because I only want ID and name of the user to be sent as a response. And now if I go here and refresh the page, then you can see here I am only getting ID and name, and you can write whatever you want over here. Let's say channel, let's say YouTube, let's say YT over here. And if I come here and refresh, then every users will get this channel is equal to YT. So let's not do this over here. So you get the point, yeah? Whatever you write over here, the user's data will be mapped through it, and then it will return whatever we want. And if I refresh here, again, we have this ID and name. And if you see here in the users, we have some other things like email, and we don't want this email to be exposed, then we'll not just return it from the resource. Okay, let me now go to the documentation. So you can see here, we have already made a user resource and returned the data. Similarly, we can do the user collection. So let me just do that over here. And user collection is basically the array form of the user resource. So let me show you over here. So we'll say PHP artisan make resource user resource collection. I like to write it as a user resource collection. You can see here in the documentation, it is only written over here like user collection, but I like to write it as a user resource collection because we have user resource and user resource collection. It just feels natural to me. So I'll just do it like this and hit enter. If there is a named collection over here, then Laravel will automatically extend this user resource collection with a different thing. So let me show you over here, different class I mean. So here, if I go over here, then you can see here it extends the resource collection. But if you see here, then it extends only JSON resource. That's the difference, okay? Now let me just remove this thing from here. And you can see here it is returning parent to array. And by default, whenever we call this user resource collection from a controller or anywhere, then it will actually take the content of this user resource by convention. They must have the same name. They must start with the same name like this, okay? Here, user resource and user resource collection. Or it can only be user collection. It will just magically know to take the content of the user. So we'll just keep it as it is. And here, let me just go over here in the test controller, and here let's say just say users, and let's say user get like this, and instead of this, so let me comment this, and here I'll say return new user resource collection, and here will be users like this. Now if I come here and refresh, then you can see here I am getting data. And inside the data, I am only getting ID and name, which means that this user resource is automatically taking the data from the user resource. You might need resource collection sometimes, but you might not. But let me tell you one thing, that you can accomplish the same thing from the user's resource as well. So this thing, we are getting this thing, yeah. So here, instead of this, I'll just say return user resource, and there is a static method collection, and here we can pass users like this. And if I come here and refresh, then the same data will get over here. There is slight difference when using user resource collection and user resource with the static method collection. Like you can pass external metadata from within the user resource collection class itself. We'll see that a little bit later. So here we have seen this concept overview. I have already shown you how it works. Like the user resource collection automatically fetches the data from the user resource by the convention. So if you see here resource collection, I have already shown you these things. And let me just go over here. Okay, it is saying preserving keys. Let me show you this one. So here, let me just return over here, okay? Users key by, we can say ID like this, okay? So if I do it like this, then ID will be prepended on each and every users. So let me just show you that over here. You can see here 1, 2, 3 like this. The ID is on the key side, okay? Now if I just do it like this, so let me just write it over here like this, and if I return it like this, or whatever the way you like, either like this or this, and if I come here and refresh, then the data will be reset, the keys will be reset. But you don't want this kind of behavior, then just go ahead here and write this public preserve keys equals to true. So let me go here in the user resource, and here in the public property, I'll write this And after this, I'll go here and refresh. Then you can see here 1, 2, 3, all the keys are also preserved and it is still inside the data object. But most of the time you don't want this kind of behavior, so we'll just reset it and it will be like this as previous one. Now let me again go here, customizing underlying resource class. By convention, we know that users resource collection will take the user resource, but if you want it to actually use a different resource, then you can just write here public collects and the different name of the resource. So let me just make another resource, make resource user new resource like this. And if we go over here and let me remove this comment from here, and here let me go to the user resource. Let me copy these things from here and paste it over here, and let me just say email over here. Okay, and here this email like this. After this, we'll go here in the user resource collection and let me just copy this thing from here and I'll just paste it like this, and instead of this member I'll say user new resource like this. And here in the test controller I'll return this thing from here like this, and if I come here and refresh, then it should also contain the email. So this is also very important, but if I just comment this out, then we'll not see that email. So if you want different resource to be utilized by the collection, then you can do this. Now let us look at the next thing. So writing resources. So you have already seen this. So many things are repeated in the documentation so that it will be easier for you to understand. So that's it. Now we have a relationship. There can be either has many, has one, many to many, all kind of relationship. Everything is going to work the same way. Now let me go here in the user, and you can see here we have this over here. This roles belongs to many permission. We have this post has many. Let us look at the roles because I have seeded the roles, so we'll look into this roles permission. Here, if I just go over here in the user resource, and let's say I also want to see the roles of the user, then you might be tempted to do it like this. Let's say roles, and let's say this roles, and obviously it will work. So let me show you that over here like this and refresh, and it is saying attempting to lazy load the roles, because here in the app service provider I have added this model prevent lazy loading. Let me just comment this out for now and refresh. Then yes, you can see the roles, but also you are seeing this pivot and this created at, updated at, every kind of things. But let's say you don't want all these kind of things, then guess what, you need to create a new resource. So let us create a role resource for this roles. So let me say PHP artisan make resource, and let's say role resource. Now let me go over here, and here is the role resource over here. Let me just remove this thing from here, and here return, I'll say here, let's say id dollar this id, because this refers to role, and name, and I'll say this name like this. Okay, we have created a role resource, and if I again come here and refresh, then nothing is changed. It's because we haven't implemented it. Okay, so here in the user resource, instead of this, we'll say here user resource collection these roles. Here we'll pass it like this. Sorry, not user resource but role resource. Now if I refresh, then you can see here I am only getting id and name. Isn't it cool? You can see here the power of Laravel API resource. Now here everything is looking good, but we have here n+1 query problem, as you have seen already from the error before that we got. We haven't loaded the roles. So you can see here in the test controller we haven't loaded the roles lazily over here, but also we are getting roles over here, but we don't want that behavior. We only want to show the id and name of the users but not the roles. Then how can we do that? You can see here it is showing over here, it is showing like this. I have just shown you this thing, but if you want to just lazily load the relationship, it is not showing over here. Let me just go over here. It might be a little bit at the bottom, but let me show you that. So here we'll say here this when loaded and the name of the relationship. So I am writing here when roles are loaded, then only just use this key over here. So if I come here and refresh the page, then we'll not see any roles over here. But if I come here and just write here with like this, and let's say roles, then refresh the page and I'll get the roles with the ID and name. Still, I'll not get created at, updated at, and all those keyboard things because I haven't added that on my role resource. Isn't it great? And if you are still with me till now, then this video deserves a thumbs up, guys. So don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. With that, let us continue. So let me just go a little bit above over here. We have this data wrapping concept over here. You can see here everything is wrapped inside this data, but let's say you don't want anything to be wrapped inside the data, then you can just go over here, let's say. So before that, let me show you this. So here we can do public static wrap user. So we have data over here, but you want something else in this data, then just go over here in the user resource and write this public static wrap, and here write the name, and this data will be replaced with user. Let me refresh here, and it's not working obviously. So if I just check, okay, user resource, and in the test controller, okay, yeah, we are using here user resource, so this must be inside the user resource. So let me go here and just write over here this thing over here, and if I refresh, then you can see here user is present over here. So let me just quickly remove this thing and again refresh, then we'll see that data. But let's say you don't even want this data, you only want the array. So for that, let me just go over here, and you can just go here in the app service provider and add this JSON resource without wrapping. Let me go here in the app service provider, which is inside app providers. I'll just add that over here, and I need to import this JSON resource, which is this one. I'll show you over here this JSON resource. Now if I come here and refresh the page, and magic, the data has disappeared. And the same thing works for single user as well. So if you go here in the test controller, and let me just uncomment this thing from here, and let me reload, then there is no data. But if I just go over here in the app service provider and comment this out, come here, refresh, then you can see data over here. And there is one more thing that you need to know about it. So we are writing here this JSON without wrapping, and let me reload over here. We are not seeing any data. And similarly, let me show you that first for the collection. It will be easy for you. So let me just remove this key by thing and refresh. There is no data. But if you use paginate, let me say 10 over here, okay, and if I refresh, then you'll still get that data because you also have these other extra properties. In order to have these extra properties, you need that user's data to be wrapped in something, so this data is present for that purpose. You will have data, links, and meta, and inside also meta you will have links. You can use these links to show the pagination. It is very easy to do it. So you saw that one thing, even if you do without wrapping, then this data will appear if you are just writing paginate. And in another case also it will show. I'll show you that a little bit later. So here we have seen this wrapping nested resource. It is the same thing. Now here pagination, I have already shown you that. We'll show this data, links, and meta. And there are some conditional attributes. You can show some data conditionally. So let me go here in this one, user one. So let me just comment this thing, and let me go over here in the user resource. So roles over here and refresh, then you can see, and let me just do over here. I like this data, so I'll just show it. Okay, data, ID, and name. Okay, now let's say you want to show the email if it is admin. Let me show you that over here in the database. Here type, we have this normal, and let's say this one as admin, okay, the first one. And let me go that over here and user resource here. Okay, so we want to show the email of the user only if that user is admin. So for that case, we'll just say here email, and I'll do this when, and the first one is a condition. We'll say this type, and if you check here in the user model, I have this type and it is casted as a user type enum. So here I'll say if user type is equal to, I'll say user type enum, and enum will be admin, like this. Inside the enum we have this admin and normal. If the user is admin, then we'll show this email and comma. Now if I refresh over here, then I'll see the email. But if I just come here in the test controller and let me just do here, let's say find the second user, we know that the second user is not admin, so the email should not show here. If I refresh, then the email is gone. That's the huge power of API resource. You can conditionally show or hide the data. But I always recommend you to wrap the second one inside a closure, because if you have some expression like the carbon instance, then it might throw some error if you try to access a property on the carbon instance and it is not loaded. So always try to do here function, and you can just do here return email like this, and it will work the same way. You can see here there is no email, and if I again come here and find the user with the ID of 1 and refresh, then email is present over here. Basically, whenever you write function, it is lazily loaded. And let me also show you one more thing over here. Okay, let us just see this email example. Okay, I'll just comment this out for now, and here let's say email. So you want this email to be present if the user has passed the email from the controller. Then you can do this. When you can do it in two ways, I'll show you both the way, first the long form and the second in the short form. So when this email, you can just do it like this. If email is present, then just return email, otherwise don't return it. So for this, we'll go over here in the test controller, and here let's say select, and here I'll do ID and name, and let's say email also. Okay, so I have selected here ID, name and email. Then if I refresh over here, then I'll get ID, name and email. But if I just do it like this, email, I'll just remove the email and come here and refresh, then email is gone, because we have added this when condition over here. If you see here, there is no when condition. So if I just go over here in the test controller and remove this name as well, then there will be the name key. Still the name key will be present, but the value will be null. You can see here, this is the difference. But if you see here, then we are writing it twice. So in order to solve this problem, or just, it is not a problem, but the UX thing. So in order to solve this, there is next method. It is when not null, and here we will pass this email. So if this value is not null, then it will actually return this value. So now if I come here and do name only, then if I come here and refresh, that email value is not present. And if I again select that email and refresh, then you can see here it is present. So this is much more shorter syntax, and I will always use this instead of that previous one. So let me comment this one. With these when null or when method, you can only show or hide one column, but say using the same condition you want to show or hide the multiple columns or multiple keys, values, whatever you want to say it. So we have this thing. Okay, so let's say, let me say here when like this, when this email, and let's say this email. So this condition, and the same, instead of this, let me say this condition. Okay, if this type admin, or whatever you want to write, so it doesn't matter. So I'll write here, if the user type is admin, we'll show email, and we'll also show here, let's say type, like this. So we have to write the same condition twice here. And if you have some complex condition logic, then it is very, very bad to do it, duplicating the things. Obviously you can just extract this into a variable over here and use it, but again you have to write when twice. So let me come here and refresh, and obviously I have to go over here and let me just say here type, like this, and refresh. Then you can see here email and type is present. So instead of doing this when twice, we have another method for it, and the name of the method is, guess what, merge when. So let me just show you that, and we have already seen this when not null and this when thing with a closure. Okay, So this is the next method that I wanted to show you, which is this merge when. So here I'll just do, so this merge when, and we'll write the condition only once. I'll just copy this thing and paste it over here. And the second thing, you can pass either a closure or an array. So let me just write an array over here, but I just recommend you to use closure always. So here we'll say email, and we'll say here this email, so like this, and instead of email we'll write type like this. Now we don't need this, and let me come here and refresh the page. Then we can see here both email and type. But now if I just remove this type from here, or just instead of finding one, we'll just do 2 and refresh, then both email and types are gone. Okay, instead of returning an array from here, we can just, let me just cut it and let me just call a function like this, and here I'll return an array from inside a closure. So if I refresh, then it is working the same way, and again let me change it to 1, and we have this email and type over here. So now let us look at the next thing, conditional relationship. We have already seen this when loaded. It is just shown over here, and I have already shown you. If we write here when loaded, like we have seen over here, so here when roles are loaded, then only the roles are present on the output. Conditional relationship count. So similar to the when loaded, we have this when counted. So let me show you that also. So here, let's say roles count. Let's say a user can have multiple roles, then we can just do here. If you see here, we have only this when counted, this when counted roles. Now let me go here and let me just say here with roles, and let me refresh over here. Then we'll still not see that roles count because we haven't loaded the count, we have only loaded the relationship. So instead of loading the roles only, we'll also load, let's say with count, and we'll say roles. You don't have to load both these things, okay? You can only load with count and it will appear. So here, and it is not showing the roles count over here. I have loaded it properly, I think. So I think I don't need to write it like this over here, okay? I'll not write select. Oh yeah, I have returned that select statement after this. That's why it is not working. I have to write this select statement. So always try to write your select statement in the beginning, okay? I think this is the problem. So let us just figure this out. So here, let me just write it like this and come here and refresh. Oh yes, and it is showing. If you write this select statement in the end, then it will actually use only those keys. It will actually find the roles count using this with count, but it will not merge it with the select. But if you write the select statement in the beginning, then it will actually merge this roles count with this user, and then it will be able to show this count. So you saw this roles count over here, and if there is no count, then it will not be shown. So let me check what is the next thing, conditional pivot information. Sometimes you might want to show the pivot relationship data depending upon some conditions, then you can do that. So here, let me show you. This role user is a pivot table, and we have here extra information expires at, and we always want to show this expires at whenever we are getting the roles and this pivot is loaded. So here we have these roles, okay? I am currently here in the roles, and let me go over here in the role resource, and we can do it here like this. So I'll just copy this thing. I have created the same name so that I could just use the example from the documentation. So expires at when pivot loaded, which means that when the pivot is loaded, and whenever we call this roles relationship, then the pivot is automatically loaded. So let me just return it from here. Instead of returning the resource, we'll just return the raw data. Refresh, and you'll see this pivot thing, okay? So let me just undo this, and when this thing is added over here, then we will see this expires at. So currently, if you see here, expires pivot and expires at, it is inside the pivot, and we have to again take the expires at. Yeah, we have to go inside the pivot. But If we write it like this, then expires at will be present over here on the root level of the roles. Now let me go here and refresh. Then you can see here expires at is present. But whenever you are trying to get the roles only using the roles resource, then it will not be present because the pivot role user is not actually loaded whenever you are only getting the roles from the role model by using role : get. So let us look at the next thing. We are almost in the end of the page. So here, so it is saying if your intermediate table is using accessor name. So suppose let's say there is something other than this role user name, then you can just use it like this. Okay, you can just check it in the documentation over here. It is very easy to do it. And adding metadata, yeah, this is the thing that you also want to know. Suppose let's say you want to add some extra metadata to this response. We have only data and the user related thing. Let me just go over here in the test controller and let me just comment this out. Okay, and let me go over here. Then I'll only get this data related to the user. Now let's say we want to add some metadata or extra data to that user, then we can easily do it. So here we'll just do like this. This is an object, so we'll wrap it inside a round brackets and we'll say additional. You can see the method name. It is so much easy to guess and remember as well. So here we'll say, let's say meta data info, or you can just, instead of this data, let's say a and let's say 1. Okay, and let's say b equals to 2. We can do it like this. And now if I come here and refresh, then you can see here the meta is just added as a sibling of this data property like this. We have added this additional data on the user meta. You might need this in some very rare cases, so you can just make use of it. And you can also pass this meta from the user inside the user resource itself. I think it's given in the documentation over here, top level metadata and with, yeah, you can just do it like this. So I'll just come here, and I don't know whether it will work on a single resource. It will obviously work for a collection, but I haven't tested for a resource. So let us check this out. So here with meta key value, and let me come here and refresh. Obviously it is not working, so we cannot do this thing on the single resource. So let me just remove this thing from here. Okay, we have seen how to add additional data to the single resource, but let us also look how to do that on a collection. So here and here, and let me comment this out, and instead of paginate we'll just say get for now. Okay, user resource collection, and let me refresh over here. Then you can see here the data is over here, and inside the data we have arrays and there is no data, additional data. So here we can also do the same thing. Just do here, let's say additional, and we can just do here meta or anything that you would like to write here, and a1, I'll just do this thing. And here if I just minimize it, then you will see that as a sibling of the data here also. But let's say if you are using this one, user resource collection, then you will do similarly like this. And here I'll just copy this thing from here and add it over here, and let me just format it. We are already returning it from here, and let me refresh over here, then it will work the same way. But as you have seen, let me copy this thing from here and go inside this user collection and add that thing over here. Okay, and we are adding this meta key value over here, and let me remove this thing from here. Okay, and come here, then refresh the page. After refreshing the page, then we'll see that meta key value, which means that we don't need to pass it from here. But let's say we are passing this additional data. Here we have meta, and here also we have meta. Here we have meta. Inside the meta we have key, and here a. So let us just see what happens. Let me refresh over here, and they are combined. But let me write here metas, then refresh the page, and you will see here there are two different things created. Okay, after this, let me just do it like this over here. Let me comment this thing, and here instead of get, let me write paginate. Okay, and 10 over here. So after doing the paginate, if I come here and refresh, then we'll have this data, links, and metas, and here also it will work the same way. If I just write here meta like this over here, and this one, and let me remove this thing. So key value, okay, meta has a key value, and I think you already saw that over here. Yeah, and again if I pass it from here, then it will again attached to the meta, and if it has a different name, then obviously it will create a separate key. You can see here a:10. And let me show you one more thing with unwrapping. In the app service provider, we have written here this JSON without wrapping. Let me just uncomment this out and refresh over here. Then it will still show this data because it is a pagination, and for pagination you need other data in addition to the actual users data. So you need links, meta, so this data is added no matter what. And let me just remove this thing also for now. Let me save it and again refresh, then you'll see the same thing, data is added. But if I just write here get like this and refresh, then you can see here that data is removed. So for the pagination, the data key is preserved. And again, in the user resource, if you just write here additional, so like let me again write here additional, and let's say a is an empty array over here, and if we do it like this, add additional data, then also it will actually add a data over here. So refresh over here, the actual data is added inside the data, and the data that we have provided as additional data will be added as a sibling to that data. So these are the things, I think these are all the things that you need to know about API resource. But also let us look if we find any additional thing. Okay, there is one last thing, this header, and you can just do it by yourself. I'm not returning a AJAX request, so I'll not be able to show you this. But whenever you are returning a response and you want some header to be passed to the client, then you can just do this x-value equals to 2, or anything that you want to pass as a header. You can just return here cast headers also, and the response will be cast to the certain time. You can do it like this, or you can just do it like this inside the resource. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are here till the end of the video, then you are the best person in the world. You have watched my video till the end, and don't forget to give a big thumbs up. And also, if you want me to create anything that you would like, then considering sponsoring this channel, and all the things that you need to know in order to sponsor this channel is in the description below. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.